I woke up to the sound of someone folding paper near my ear. That was the first thing I remember after surgery. Not the pain, not the beeping machines, not even the dryness in my throat. Just the soft crackle of paper and my daughter's voice saying, calm and bright, "Do not worry about anything, Mom. I am handling it all." My eyes were heavy, like someone had laid warm sand over my face. I could not quite focus on the room, only the shapes and shadows. I remember trying to move my hand, but it felt like it belonged to someone else. Then Lydia's face drifted into view, all careful makeup and a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "You scared me," she said softly. "But it is over now. You just rest. Let me take care of things." For a moment, I let myself relax. I had worked in hospitals my whole adult life, though always in the billing office rather than the patient side. I knew the routine of recovery, the strange fog of anesthesia, the way families hovered around a bed. This time I was on the other side of the chart, the one in the gown, the one with a plastic bracelet digging lightly into her wrist. "Lydia," I murmured, my tongue thick. "What time is it?" She smoothed my hair off my forehead, the way I used to do for her when she was still a little girl afraid of storms. "Late," she said. "You just had your gallbladder taken out. Everything went fine. The doctors talked to me. You do not need to worry about anything." Those last words should have bothered me more than they did. Maybe if I had been fully awake, they would have. But the medication pulled at me, and I let myself sink. The next time I woke up, the light had changed. Sunlight filtered in through the narrow hospital window, watery and pale, the kind you get on those uncertain spring days when the world has not decided whether to be warm or cold. My throat ached. The dull pain in my side pulsed in time with my heartbeat. Lydia sat in the visitor's chair, her phone in her hands, fingers moving quickly. When she realized my eyes were open, she set it down and leaned forward. "There you are," she said. "How do you feel?" "Like they ran me over with a small car," I managed. Then I added, out of habit rather than concern, "Did you speak to the surgeon?" She nodded, her earrings catching the light. "Yes, he explained everything. It was straightforward. They are happy with how it went." I waited for more details, the way I had heard 1,000 families ask over the years. How long is recovery? What should we watch for? What happens with medications? Instead, Lydia reached for the plastic water cup and held the straw to my lips. "Do not strain yourself with questions, Mom," she said. "You are not at work. I am handling all that. Your job is to rest." It sounded like kindness. It could have passed for kindness. But underneath the words, something felt off, like a picture hanging just slightly crooked. I swallowed, nodded, and let it go. A little later, a nurse came in to check my vitals. Not one of the nurses I knew from my years on the other side of the building. This one had soft gray streaks in her hair and laugh lines etched around her mouth. Her name tag read, Elaine B. "How are we feeling this afternoon, Miss Kent?" she asked, voice warm, professional. "I have been better," I said, then managed a small smile. "But I have also been worse." She chuckled, adjusted my blood pressure cuff, and tapped a quick note into the computer. Lydia hovered at the foot of the bed, arms crossed, her gaze flicking between the monitor and her phone. "Is everything okay?" Elaine asked her lightly. "Yes," Lydia answered quickly. "I'm just making sure nothing gets missed. Mom tends to worry about details." Elaine glanced at me over her glasses. It was the look nurses give each other when a family member is a little too involved. Only this time, I was in the bed, not behind the desk. "I see," Elaine said gently. "Well, we will take good care of her, and we will make sure she stays informed about anything she needs to know." Later, when the room was quiet again and Lydia stepped out to take a call, I tried to piece together my memories of the last 24 hours. I remembered signing some preoperative forms when I checked in, but I could not recall much after that. Anesthesia does that, I told myself. It smudges the edges. Still, a faint unease stirred under my ribs, very different from the pain of the incision. When Lydia came back, she was flushed, breathing a little faster than usual. She put on a smile as she stepped inside. "That was the bank," she said casually, like she was mentioning the weather. "I told them you will not be available for a while." "For a while," I repeated. "Lydia, it was a small surgery. I am not going into a cave." She shrugged, picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. "Still, you should not have to deal with all that. You have been managing everything on your own for years. It is time someone else took care of things. Besides, we already talked about this." "We did?" I asked. My memory did not match hers. She came closer, her eyes sharpening. "Before surgery," she said. "You were nervous. You said you did not want to be bothered with bills and paperwork while you recovered. You told me to step in, remember?" I did remember saying I trusted her. I did remember thinking how strange it felt to lean on my child after leaning on no one for so long. But I did not remember anything specific about handing over control. The unease grew a little stronger. I pushed it down. Lydia reached for my hand and squeezed it. "You do not have to worry about every little detail anymore," she said. "I promise, I will handle everything." For most of my life, I have handled everything. I balanced my checkbook down to the cent. I knew every code on a hospital bill by heart. I navigated insurance calls that made younger clerks cry. Maybe that is why what came next cut as deeply as it did. My name is Marjorie Kent. I am 72 years old, a retired hospital billing clerk, and this is my story. Before we continue, please tell me where you are watching from and subscribe to Her Legacy Tales, a place proving our best chapters can happen at any age. Now, back to the beginning of the week, my daughter decided to manage my life without asking if I wanted her to. It started 3 days before the surgery, at my kitchen table. That was when Lydia first said the words, "Mom, at your age you really should not be handling everything alone anymore." At the time, I just thought she was being dramatic. I did not realize she already had a plan. 3 days before my surgery, the kitchen smelled like coffee and lemon cleaner. I remember because I had just wiped down the counters, the way I always do when I am nervous. The clock over the stove ticked a little too loudly, counting down toward the date circled on my calendar. Lydia sat across from me, cradling a mug she had not taken a sip from. Her nails were freshly painted, pale pink, and she kept tapping them against the ceramic. "You know, Mom," she said, "I have been thinking. That sentence has never led to anything simple. Not from a teenager, not from an adult child, not from anyone." "About what?" I asked, folding the dish towel with more precision than necessary. "About all the things you still try to do on your own. The house, the car, the bills, the insurance, the property taxes. It is a lot, especially with you going under anesthesia." "Gallbladder surgery is not open heart," I said lightly. "I will be sore and slow, not comatose." She looked at me with a mixture of impatience and something like pity. "That is exactly what I am talking about. You are so stubborn. You never want to admit you might need help." I hesitated. There was some truth in that. After my husband died, I had clung to my routines like they were a life raft. Pay the bills on time, keep the house tidy, drive myself to church and the grocery store, smile when the neighbors asked how I was doing. "Help is fine," I said carefully. "Taking over is not the same thing as helping." She leaned forward, eyes bright. I am not talking about taking over, just simplifying things. If I had authority to act for you, it would make everything easier while you recover. I would not have to bother you with phone calls or signatures or forms. You could just focus on healing. The phrase slipped past me then, tucked inside her rush of words. Authority to act for you. I was thinking about the surgical consent forms, the pre-admission calls, the list of medications I had rewritten 3 times to make sure it was correct. We can talk about that later, I said. After the surgery, when my brain is not full of instructions. She pressed her lips together, clearly dissatisfied, but she let it drop. Or so I thought. Back in the hospital bed, my side aching, that conversation floated back to me in sharper detail. It did not fit as neatly in my memory as Lydia insisted it did. On the second day after surgery, a woman from the hospital social work team stopped by. She wore a cardigan with tiny embroidered flowers and carried a clipboard. Her name was Denise. "Good afternoon, Ms. Kent," she said. "How are you feeling today?" "Like someone rearranged my insides with a spoon," I replied, which made her smile. "That sounds about right for day 2, she said. "I just need to go over a few things with you. Discharge plans, support at home, that sort of thing." Lydia stepped forward immediately. "I have all that covered," she said. "Mom is coming to stay with me. I will be handling her medications, follow-up appointments, all of it." Denise nodded politely, but her gaze returned to me. "And is that what you want, Miss Kent?" she asked. It was a simple question. It felt heavier than it should have. "I will be staying with Lydia for a few days," I said slowly. "Maybe a week, but I plan to go back home once I am steady on my feet." Lydia's shoulders stiffened. "That depends on how she does," Lydia added quickly. "Her house has stairs, and she should not be driving for a while. That is why I got the power of attorney papers done, so I can make decisions if she is not up to it." The room went very still. Even the monitor seemed to pause between beeps. "I am sorry," I said. "You did what?" Lydia turned toward me, surprised by the edge in my voice. She recovered quickly, smile snapping back into place. "Mom, do not start," she said. "Remember, you signed them before surgery. We went over everything. You said you did not want to be bothered. I explained it is just a precaution. It is very standard." Denise cleared her throat softly. "Power of attorney is common, yes," she said. "But it is also a serious legal document. The person granting it needs to fully understand and agree." Heat climbed up my chest into my face. "I did not sign any power of attorney," I said. "I signed surgical consent, insurance, the usual. That is all." Lydia's eyes flashed. "Mom, you are confused," she said firmly. "It is okay. The anesthesiologist said your memory might be patchy. You were nervous. You kept saying you did not want to deal with bills while you were recovering. You put the pen to the paper yourself." I stared at her, the words ringing oddly in my ears. "You are confused. You were nervous. You kept saying." I had spent decades explaining hospital charges to patients who were sedated and scared. I knew the difference between consent and convenience. "Do you have a copy of those papers?" Denise asked gently. Lydia lifted her chin. "They are at home," she said. "I filed everything. The notary and attorney handled it. It is done. We are not undoing it every time she forgets." Every time she forgets. The way she said it, casual and dismissive, made something twist in my stomach. Denise gave me a searching look. "We can revisit this," she said. "For now, let us focus on your discharge plan and make sure you are comfortable understanding it yourself." After she left, Lydia rounded on me, her voice low. "Why would you embarrass me like that?" she hissed. In front of hospital staff, no less. They already think older people cannot manage. Older people can manage perfectly well if their children are not writing things in their name, I replied, just as quietly. Her jaw tightened. I am trying to protect you, she said. You are acting like I am some kind of thief. I did not answer. Sometimes silence says more than argument ever could. That afternoon, my phone buzzed on the tray table. Lydia reached for it, but I was quicker. The caller ID showed the name of my bank. Hello, I said, my voice still a little rough. Ms. Kent. A polite voice on the other end said, This is Rachel from customer service. I just wanted to verify some recent activity on your account. My pulse quickened. What kind of activity? I asked. There were a few large transfers initiated this morning, she said. We also received a request regarding the sale of your vehicle and a pending change tied to your home address. We wanted to confirm these actions were authorized by you, since we see you have recently had some medical procedures. Across the room, Lydia had gone very still. Her eyes were fixed on my face. No, I said slowly. I did not authorize any transfers. I am in the hospital. Rachel hesitated. I see, she said carefully. Someone presented power of attorney documentation on your behalf, a woman named Lydia Carver. For a moment, all I could hear was the steady beep of the heart monitor beside my bed. Please put a hold on everything, I said. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. Do not process any further transfers or changes until I speak with you in person. I understand, Rachel answered. We will flag the account and require you to come in with identification when you are discharged. I am very glad you picked up the phone today. When I hung up, Lydia pushed her hair back from her face with a jerky motion. You should have let me handle that, she said. You are still groggy. That is why we did the paperwork. You are making things harder. You are trying to sell my car, I said quietly. She looked away, then back. We talked about that, she said. You should not be driving. It is dangerous. The house is too much, too. You can move in with me. It is what any good daughter would do. I am just moving things along. By moving my money along as well, I asked. Her mouth flattened. I am your only child, she said. It is all going to be mine anyway. Why should we wait until something worse happens? And if you keep forgetting what you signed, maybe it is proof that you need someone to manage your affairs. There it was. Not just concern, not just worry, control, wearing the mask of responsibility. I took a slow breath, feeling the edges of my resolve harden. I may be sore, Lydia, I said, and I may be tired, but I am not gone, and I do not forget everything. She threw up her hands. You know what? She said sharply. Rest. Call the bank back later and confuse them too. I am done trying to help. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, the door swinging shut behind her with a soft final click, more painful than if she had slammed it. I stared at that door for a long time. Then I picked up the call button. Nurse, I said when the speaker crackled. Could I ask you a question about my chart? Suspicion had already broken the surface. Now I needed to know just how deep the damage went. Elaine came in a few minutes later, her expression attentive. She had the kind of presence that settles a room, even one buzzing with machines. You called for me, Miss Kent, she asked. Yes, I said, if you have a moment. She closed the door gently and came closer. What is going on? She asked. You look more troubled than a simple pain spike. I appreciated that she saw it. So many people look at older patients and assume every frown is about discomfort, not the weight of sudden change. I used to work in billing, I said. On the other side of the building, for decades. I know how paperwork should work, and I am being told I signed power of attorney over to my daughter. Elaine's eyebrows lifted a fraction. Did you? She asked evenly. No, I said. I signed consent for surgery, insurance forms, the usual, nothing more. She tapped her pen lightly against the rail, thinking. Do you remember when they say you signed it? She asked. Before surgery, I said. According to my daughter, this morning the bank called to confirm large transfers and the possible sale of my car and changes tied to my home. Someone presented those documents there. Elaine let out a quiet breath. I cannot give legal advice, she said, but I can tell you this. Your preoperative medications started well before you were taken to the operating room. You were given something to calm you, along with other drugs. Most people do not remember much once that begins. I nodded. I do not remember anything about a notary or an attorney here, I said. Let me look at the chart, she offered. She stepped to the computer mounted on the wall and scrolled through the electronic record with practiced fingers. Her eyes moved line after line before she spoke again. Here, she murmured. Preoperative sedative given at... She paused and corrected herself, remembering the hospital's habit of writing exact numerals. At a certain time. Documented by the anesthesiology team. After that point, any consent should have been for the surgery itself alone. Is there any mention of power of attorney in there? I asked. She scanned again. No, she said slowly. There are notes about your daughter being present, about her asking questions, but nothing about legal authority documents in our system. That would normally involve case management or social work and be scanned into your file. So, if anything was signed, I said, it was not processed the usual way. Or it happened somewhere else, she added. In your home, at a lawyer's office, but not officially here, not through us. The room felt smaller for a moment, like the walls had leaned in. Elaine, I asked, do you have security cameras in the preoperative area? She hesitated. We have cameras in the main halls and entrances, she said, mostly for safety. Why? Because my daughter says I signed everything right outside the operating room, I replied. Handed back a clipboard, spoke to a notary, all of that. Elaine's eyes narrowed just slightly, the way a person's do when something finally clicks into place. The hallway outside pre-op does have coverage, she said. But access to that footage is handled by security, not nursing. It is usually for falls, missing property, that sort of thing. I felt something inside me settle, not with peace, but with determination. If I wanted to ask about that footage, I said, how would I go about it? She studied me for a moment. Miss Kent, she said gently, do you believe your daughter has done something improper? I thought of the bank call, of the casual way Lydia mentioned selling my car and possibly the house, of the words you are confused and at your age. I believe my daughter has done something without my consent, I said, and she is counting on me being too foggy or too ashamed to push back. Elaine nodded once, a small, firm gesture. In that case, she said, you have every right to ask questions. I can request that someone from security stops by to talk about general procedure. I cannot promise anything about what they will release, but you are not wrong to ask. Please do, I said. She patted my hand. In the meantime, she added, keep a small notebook. Write down times, names, what people say. I know that sounds like something from a television show, but it helps, especially when others may try to claim you are just confused. A thin smile pulled at my mouth. Documentation, I said. Now you are speaking my language. After she left, I stared at the ceiling tiles and thought about how many patient families I had seen over the years. The worried spouses, the exhausted adult children, the ones who meant well and the ones who saw illness as an opening. At my desk, I had always assumed there were enough safeguards, enough checks and balances. Now I was seeing how a determined person could slip between those cracks, especially if the patient trusted them. The next morning, a man in a security uniform knocked lightly on my door. He was in his 50s, with kind eyes and a posture that spoke of long hours on his feet. His badge read T. Vaughn, but I did not yet know how important he would become. "Miss Kent," he said, "I am Thomas from security. Nurse Elaine said you had some questions about the pre-operative area." "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "I want to know if there is video from the day of my surgery, specifically from the hallway outside pre-op. I am being told I signed important legal papers there, and I do not remember it." He frowned thoughtfully. "We do have cameras in that hall," he said. "We keep footage for a while, especially around surgical zones. Usually we review it for incidents like falls or disputes. Legal documents are not our usual territory, but if there is a question about whether you were in a condition to sign something, that could be a safety issue too." "Can it be checked?" I asked. "Even just to confirm whether anyone came with a clipboard at the time my daughter says I signed." He scratched his chin. "I cannot hand over raw footage just like that," he said. "There are privacy rules, but I can review it myself and note whether it lines up with what is being claimed. If there is a serious concern, I can involve risk management or patient advocacy." "That would be enough," I said. "For now." He nodded. "I will need to check the time details," he said. "Do you know when this supposed signing took place?" "According to my daughter," I said, "it was right before they wheeled me in. But according to the chart, I was already under the effect of sedatives by then." That caught his attention. "Let me look into it," he said. "I will be back as soon as I can." When he left, I reached for the small notebook Elaine had left on my tray. I wrote down his name, the time of his visit, and his exact words as best as I could remember them. I also wrote down Lydia's words from the day before. "You are confused. You signed it yourself. I am your only child." Seeing them in ink made the shape of her plan clearer. That afternoon, Lydia swept back into the room carrying a blue tote bag. She spoke before the door had even fully closed. "Here," she said briskly. "I brought you some things. Nightgown, slippers, lotion. You will feel more human." "Thank you," I said. "We need to talk." She placed the bag on the chair and folded her arms. "If this is about the bank again," she began, "I already explained. They are always jumpy. That is why we did the paperwork." "I just spoke with hospital security," I said. "They are going to review footage from the hallway outside pre-op." Her face went pale for a heartbeat, then flushed quickly. "You what?" she asked. I noticed the way her voice rose a little too fast, the way her hand tightened on the strap of the tote. "I do not remember signing legal papers in that hall," I said calmly. "Since you say I did, and since those documents are now being used to move my money around, it seems only reasonable to confirm what happened." "You are making this so difficult," she said, her voice dropping again. "Mom, it was simple. You were worried about forgetting things. You said you wanted me to be able to decide if something went wrong. I arranged it. You were there. You held the pen. Why are you doing this now?" "Because my bank called," I replied. "Because my car is being offered to buyers. Because there are whispers about changing the status of my house while I am lying here with stitches in my side." She exhaled sharply. "So what if I sell the car?" she said. "You should not be driving, and the house is too big. You need to be somewhere safer, closer to me. I am not stealing from you. I am just speeding up what is going to happen anyway." "That is not your decision to make without me," I said. She looked at me, and for a moment, I saw the little girl who used to cling to my hand in grocery stores, afraid of getting lost. Then her expression hardened into something I did not recognize. "If you keep fighting me on this," she said quietly, "they are going to think you are not capable of making decisions. Do you really want strangers deciding what happens next? Or do you want your only child to handle it? Think about that." The threat was soft, but it was still a threat. "I have been thinking about a lot of things," I said. "And the more I think, the more I want to see every scrap of paper you say I signed." She shook her head in disbelief. "You have no idea how ungrateful you sound right now," she said. "Maybe the anesthesia really did a number on your memory." Then she picked up her bag and left again, leaving the scent of her perfume hanging in the air like a cloud that did not quite cover the sourness beneath. When the door closed, I let my shoulders sag for a moment. Then I straightened them again. Fear had been my first reaction. Shock had been my second. But what I felt now was something different. Not rage. Not despair. A cold, clear line of resolve. I picked up the notebook and wrote another entry. Lydia's visit, her exact phrases, her attempt to suggest I was not competent. If my daughter wanted to build a false story about me, I would answer with a true one written in careful ink. An hour later, Thomas returned. He knocked quietly and stepped in, closing the door behind him. "I reviewed the footage," he said without preamble. My heart thudded once, heavy. "What did you see?" I asked. He pulled a small notepad from his pocket, echoing my own habit. "At the time you were being prepped for surgery," he said. "The camera outside pre-op shows your bed being rolled down the hallway. You are clearly under the influence of medication. Your eyes are closed. Your arm is limp. There is no point where you are sitting up to sign anything." My fingers curled around the blanket. "Then," he continued, "there is a moment about 10 minutes later. Your daughter is in the hallway with a clipboard. She is speaking with a woman who appears to be a notary. They never enter your room. Your bed remains inside, with curtains partially drawn. The notary watches as your daughter bends over the board and writes something, then hands it back. The notary stamps it. They shake hands. That is all." I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling the sick mix of grief and vindication wash over me. "So there is no point on camera where I am seen signing anything?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "None," he said. "And your medical record shows that by that time, you were already sedated. Even if you had been briefly awake, you would not have been in any condition to give informed legal consent. That is not just my opinion. That is policy." I opened my eyes and met his gaze. "Can this be documented?" I asked. "Officially, in some kind of report." "Yes," he said. "I am writing it up for our risk management department. They may also involve patient advocacy. If you choose to speak to an attorney, they can request the footage formally. For now, I will note that there is a discrepancy between what is being claimed and what actually occurred." "Thank you," I said. The words felt inadequate, but they were all I had. He gave a small nod. "I have a mother about your age," he said. "I would want someone to listen if she said something did not feel right." After he left, I sat in the quiet room, the monitor ticking away beside me, and let the new reality settle into place. My daughter had not just taken advantage of my foggy state. She had orchestrated it. She had used my surgery as cover, my sedation as an opportunity, my trust as a door she could slip through. But she had made one crucial mistake. She had forgotten that hospitals watch their halls as carefully as I once watched my ledgers. She thought she could rewrite my signature. She did not understand that some truths are carved deeper than ink. By the time the sun began to set, painting a faint stripe of orange across the opposite wall, I had already decided what I would do next. I would go home on my own terms. I would stand in front of my bank in person. And I would make sure that the next time Lydia tried to speak for me, she would have to do it in a room full of people who could see the truth for themselves. By the time I was discharged, the spring sky outside the hospital looked washed clean, as if the world had been scrubbed down to its bones, while I lay inside recovering and uncovering. Thomas had given me a written incident note. Elaine had left me her personal number, if anything seems off after you go home. And the small notebook at my bedside was now half filled with times, names, and exact words. When Lydia arrived to pick me up, she was all brightness again. A too wide smile, too sharp perfume, too fast movements. "Ready to go home, Mom?" she asked. Her tone was sweet. Her eyes were restless. "More than ready," I said. She carried my overnight bag, chattering as we walked down the corridor toward the elevators. "You will stay with me for a while," she said. "My guest room is ready. I bought you new pajamas. Oh, and I moved some things around in your house so we can start packing what you do not need." I stopped walking. "You went to my house?" I asked. She blinked, then laughed lightly. "Oh, come on. You still keep pantry items from 10 years ago. It needed sorting. I am helping you, Mom. You keep forgetting that." The word forgetting echoed too loudly against the hallway walls. I did not argue. Not yet. Not when I knew what she had signed. Not when I had footage of her forging my name. Not when the bank had already frozen my accounts at my request. We rode down in silence. Once outside, she opened the passenger door of her car with exaggerated care. "Slowly," she said, guiding my elbow. If she noticed I did not lean into her touch, she pretended not to. As she drove, she kept glancing toward me, as if evaluating how alert I was. "You really should not be making big decisions right now," she murmured. "Your memory has been so—" "Lydia," I interrupted gently. "Let me rest for a bit, please." She seemed satisfied with that. She took my quiet for weakness. That was her mistake. When we reached her house, I realized something immediately. She had prepared for my arrival as if I were moving in permanently. My suitcase was already in the guest room. A new walker sat folded in the corner. Nightlights were plugged into the hallway outlets. There was a plastic bin labeled Mom's Medications, despite the fact nothing had been prescribed except mild pain pills. "See?" she said proudly, hands on her hips. "You do not have to struggle anymore." I lowered myself onto the bed, breathing slowly through the ache in my side. "Lydia," I said, "I need my phone charger." "It is in the kitchen," she said. "But you should lie down. You should not be spending so much time on your phone. It is confusing you." My fingers tightened in the blanket. "Confusing you." She said it again. After she left the room, I stood, gripping the dresser to steady myself. Once the dizziness passed, I followed the faint light from the hallway night lamps and made my way to the kitchen. My purse was on the counter. I opened it quietly. My wallet was there, but my checkbook was gone. So were my house keys. My heart thudded, slow and heavy. I opened the side pocket. My driver's license was missing too. A cold understanding slid into place. Lydia had not simply been rearranging my life. She had begun erasing my ability to move through it. That night, while Lydia slept upstairs, I sat in the dim kitchen with a glass of water and my notebook. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I wrote down everything missing, everything Lydia had said, every detail of the forged signing caught on camera. At dawn, I showered, dressed slowly, and walked outside without waking her. My ribs ached, my legs trembled, but I walked anyway. I ordered a rideshare to the hospital. Once inside, I went straight to the security office. Thomas looked startled when he saw me. "Ms. Kent, should you be out of bed?" "I should be seen," I said simply. And I need a copy of that report. He hesitated, then nodded. I filed it with risk management. They can release it to you directly. Can we speak to them? I asked. He picked up the phone, dialed, spoke quietly. A few minutes later, a woman in a charcoal blazer walked in. Her badge said, Patient Safety and Risk Response, M. Willis. Ms. Kent, she said warmly, I understand there may have been some concerning activity surrounding your admission. I explained everything, all of it, the missing checkbook, the bank call, Lydia's insistence that I was confused, the forged signature, the video footage. The woman listened carefully, taking structured notes. May I see the footage again? She asked. Thomas brought it up. The three of us watched in silence as the image showed me being rolled down the hall, eyes closed, unconscious. Then Lydia appeared, clipboard in hand, talking to the notary. Her hand moved across the page. The notary stamped it. They shook hands. No part of me appeared in the scene. When the clip ended, the woman exhaled. This is extremely serious, she said. You were clearly incapacitated. Any signature obtained like this is invalid, and if that document was used to access your finances, this becomes a legal matter outside the hospital. I know, I said quietly. I will prepare an official statement and provide you with it, she continued. And if you want to involve an attorney or a senior legal clinic, you will have everything you need. From there, I took a cab directly to my bank. A middle-aged banker named Mr. Hollis brought me into a private office. Ms. Kent, he said softly, we have been waiting for you to come in. He laid out a folder. Inside were photocopies of withdrawal requests, a printed notice about the proposed sale of my car, a scanned copy of the forged power of attorney form. I stared at it, remembering the shape of my own handwriting. This was not mine, not even close. Is this enough for you to freeze everything? I asked. It already is frozen, he said. But with proof of incapacitation at the time and a misrepresented signature, we can not only block all current actions. He paused, but prevent your daughter from accessing anything further. Do that, I said. And Ms. Kent, he hesitated. This kind of forgery is not a misunderstanding. It is fraud. I felt something inside me settle with a final click. Not anger, not triumph, certainty. A certainty I had not felt since before the surgery. Can you schedule a meeting with her? I asked. Here, in this office? He blinked. Yes, if that is what you want. It is, I said, because I wanted her to hear the truth in a room she could not control. And I wanted her to hear it from someone other than me. The meeting was set for 2 days later. When Lydia arrived at the bank, she wore her favorite blazer, the deep green one she saved for interviews and holidays. Any day she wanted to look polished and in charge. She walked into the private office and froze when she saw me already seated. Mom? She said, forcing a laugh. What is this? Why are you here? You should be resting. I am resting now, I said calmly. She glanced at Mr. Hollis, then back at me. Did you schedule this? She asked uncertainly. Yes, I said. Sit down, Lydia. She sat slowly, eyes flicking between us. Mr. Hollis folded his hands on the table. Miss Carver, he began professionally, we have some concerns regarding the documents recently presented on behalf of Ms. Kent. Lydia let out a small scoff. Oh, for heaven's sake. I told my mother she signed it. She does not remember because of the sedation. You people need to stop making this complicated. Mr. Hollis opened a folder and slid the forged power of attorney form toward her. This, he said, is the document you submitted to authorize the transfer of funds and the sale of assets. Yes, she said, crossing her arms. I explained that. Do you recognize this signature? He asked. Of course I do, she snapped. It is my mother's. She was shaky because she was nervous. "Your mother was unconscious," he said. Her face went blank. "What?" she whispered. "She was unconscious," he repeated. "We have a documented medical timeline. And additionally," he opened another folder. "We have a statement from the hospital's risk management office and confirmation from security personnel who reviewed footage of the hallway outside preoperative care." Lydia's mouth opened, then closed. She sat up straighter. "What are you talking about?" she asked. "Footage? What footage?" Mr. Hollis pressed a small button on a tablet. A short clip began playing. There she was, standing in the hallway, clipboard in hand, speaking with the notary, signing something. She went pale, reaching for the tablet. This is not legal," she sputtered. "You cannot show this." "It is evidence of fraud," Mr. Hollis said quietly, "and forgery, and misrepresentation." Tears sprang to her eyes, not soft tears, but hot ones, born of panic. "Mom," she stammered. "Mom, please. I was just trying to help. I did not want you to struggle anymore. I was going to take care of everything." "By taking everything," I said softly. She shook her head rapidly. "No, I thought you are getting older and you forget things, and I am your daughter, and—" "I forgot nothing," I said. "And you knew that." She wiped at her face with trembling fingers. "I did not mean to hurt you," she whispered. I watched her carefully. All my life, she had been quick to say I did not mean it whenever consequences came close. This time, I let the silence stretch before answering. "I know you think you were helping," I said, "but you did not ask. You did not discuss. You decided, for me, about my life, my home, my money, and you did it while I was unconscious." She flinched as if struck. Mr. Hollis continued, his tone professional. "We have already locked all accounts," he said. "No transfers will be permitted. No asset sales. No legal authority of any kind will be recognized from this document." Lydia let out a broken sound. "But what am I supposed to do?" she asked. "Mom, you cannot live alone. You cannot—" I held up a hand. "I will decide that," I said. "Not you." Her shoulders began to shake. "Are you going to press charges?" she whispered. The air in the room seemed to hold its breath. I looked at her, my grown daughter, the person I once stayed awake nights for, worrying about fevers and math tests and heartbreaks. "I want distance," I said finally. "Not punishment." She let out a shaky breath of relief. "But," I added, "you will return my checkbook, my keys, my license, everything you took, and from now on, we will not make decisions for each other." "I was just scared," she murmured. "So was I said. "But I chose honesty. You chose control." Mr. Hollis closed the folder. "The meeting is concluded," he said gently. "Ms. Kent, we are here if you need anything further." Lydia stood slowly, her face a crumpled mix of defiance and humiliation. As she walked out, she whispered something without looking back. "You should have just trusted me." But trust is not blind. Trust is earned. And she had broken hers in a hallway where she thought no one would ever watch. I went home that afternoon, not to Lydia's house, to my house. The one I bought with my husband decades ago. The one I painted twice. The one whose windows I washed every spring. The steps felt steeper than I remembered, but they were mine. The lock turned easily after Mr. Hollis arranged a replacement set for me. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lavender, the last scent I had used before going to the hospital. Lydia had moved some things around. I moved them, right back. Piece by piece, room by room, restoring what she had tried to rearrange. Over the next week, with help from the senior legal clinic, I updated my estate documents properly. I named a trusted friend, my neighbor, Ruth, as my emergency contact. I added legal precautions that reflected my wishes, not someone else's ambition. I did not block Lydia's number, though I was tempted. Instead, I answered her calls with calm, brief sentences. No anger, no guilt, but no openings either. Eventually, her calls stopped. Silence settled where chaos used to be. I found I liked it. The quiet was no longer lonely. It was peaceful, like sitting in an empty church where sunlight slants through stained glass. Months passed. I healed, physically, emotionally. I learned how to say phrases I had avoided for years. No, that does not work for me. No, I will handle that myself. No, I am not signing anything today. People think the hardest part of aging is the loss of strength or the slowing of steps. But the truth is simpler. The hardest part is realizing someone you raised might mistake your calmness for weakness. I am calm, but I am not weak. One afternoon, as I was sorting mail at my kitchen table, I came across the notebook Elaine told me to keep. Half the pages were filled with dates and dialogue and careful handwriting. I read through it slowly. Some pages still hurt. Some felt like paper armor. At the very end of the notebook, on a blank page, I wrote, "Truth does not disappear when someone forges your name. It waits. And eventually, it finds ink of its own." Then I closed the notebook and placed it in my drawer. Not as a record of betrayal, but as a reminder of what clarity can do when a quiet woman decides she will not be rewritten.